Right. Thank you very much for having me today. And I thank Global Labor Research Center for organizing this workshop for people who might face isolation during pandemic. So I want to begin my presentation today with a story of a Korean immigrant home care worker I met in LA, Koreatown. Her name is Soon-Shil, and she's 60 years old, and she's working as IHSS worker in LA, Koreatown. Like most Korean immigrant workers I met in LA, Sunje was a full-time homemaker in Korea. Then she started working in small Korean-owned businesses in Koreatown when she immigrated to US. As a woman of color with a severe language barrier, Sunshil had no choice but working in Koreatown. And she worked in Korean restaurants and supermarkets for years. But as she got older, even those service jobs in small businesses in Koreatown came to be not available to Sunjil. Then she got to know about the IHSS job, which is, according to her, a fitting job for mid-aged women. So she started the work a few years ago. IHSS in-home supportive services is a state-funded care program that provides services for frail elders and people with disabilities. They provide services like cleaning, feeding, and bathing, etc. And when I met Sunju, she was taking care of two Korean immigrant elders in Koreatown under the IHSS. Sunju called her two recipients mother. Calling them mother, sometimes Sunshu provided services outside the boundary of the IHSS authorized tasks, such as like making a box of kimchi or going to picnic with the recipients, just like what daughters do in their families. Calling the recipient's mother, Sunshil and many other LA Korean IHSS workers in LA saw the meanings and the value of their work from becoming a fictive kin of their recipients. Like other Korean immigrant IHSS workers in LA, Sunju also presented her work as work that any woman in the family can do. And she said what she does at the work is, quote, those ordinary things you do at homes, like cleaning, laundry, sort of things. But while she said that her work is those ordinary things you do at home, she actually meant a specific type of work, Korean a specific type of work. Instead of emphasizing knowledge or skills in their work, Korean IHS's workers emphasize their capability to create and maintain the images of family lives by doing physical and emotional work that are largely performed by women in imaginary extended Korean family. In the quote on the slide from the interviews with Sunshil, she makes the contrast between the US, where adult children abandon their parents, and Korea, where women in the family take care of the elders. So imagining the two societies very differently, Sunshil implicitly emphasizes the value of cultural knowledge in providing good care to Korean immigrant elderly people in Los Angeles. But Sunche is not always an obedient and flexible daughter. In fact, she is an active member of the union. In Los Angeles SEIU, IHSS workers formed their own ethnic groups within the union, and Sunche became a member of Korean group within SEIU, and she joined the union protests many times. When their clients abused them, Sunjil and other unionized Korean IHSS workers drew on essential part of the IHSS, that is, they got paid by the government. For example, when Yura's client suddenly fired her, she argued with the recipient saying that, quote, are you paying us? No, it's government who pays us. The sentence, the government pays us, was reiterated by many workers in Los Angeles, Koreatown, when they bring their paid worker subjectivity forward. So putting together, Korean IHSS workers in LA, Koreatown deploy seeming conflicting subjectivities. On one hand, they present themselves as fictive kin, saying that any woman in the family can do their work. Here, the emphasis is on a daughter in their paid daughter subjectivity who do the effective and culturally specific labor. But on the other hand, they have a claim that they are government workers who produce public goods, highlighting that the fact that they are paid by the government. And I found this seeming conflicting subjectivity very interesting because in my dissertation project, I compared four groups of care workers in Korea and LA, how looking at how these workers form unique care worker subjectivities, examining how different groups of workers develop strategies to improve their work based on those divergent subjectivities. The four cases in my dissertation project shows divergent care worker subjectivities, and I can roughly summarize them in three camps. First, non-migrant care workers in Korea present themselves as care professionals, and they said they're not manual workers or they're not maids, emphasizing their ability to discipline themselves to perform skilled and symbolically appropriate care for their recipients. And I call this care professional subjectivity. Second, migrant workers in South Korea who are largely ethnically Korean from China working in informal sectors see themselves as fictive kin rather than workers, emphasizing their capacity to provide affectionate care that is not dictated by capitalist market logic. And I call it fictive kin care worker subjectivity. And I think we are somewhat familiar with these two types of care worker subjectivities, but the LA case shows a hybrid of both. Korean immigrant IHSS workers in LA Koreatown find their dignity and self-worth in their ability to care for vulnerable co-ethnic elders, but within the government subsidized program. Then why does subjectivity matter in terms of care workers' struggles and organizing? Why I'm focusing care workers' subjectivities? Well, low-paid care workers often do not see what they do as work. Rather, they see their work as their moral duty and an expression of their altruistic selves. And when workers perceive the low value attached to their work as natural, and when they do not find language to make their right claims as workers, they lose political leverage to exercise their collective voices. Then what kind of dynamics shape these seeming conflicting dual subjectivity that I found in Korean immigrant IHS workers in Los Angeles, Koreatown? I argue that labor market, organizational, and policy context jointly shape the formation of LA workers, care workers subjectivity level. And let me explain labor market context. In LA town, there is a strong co-ethnic preference around care. Korean immigrant elderly people with limited English fluency prefer Korean workers. And to meet the demand, Korean immigrant workers in their 50s and 60s who do not have employment opportunities in the broadly racialized labor market are funneled into the home care. And on the other hand, Korean IHS workers in LA Koreatown are in a situation where they are trapped in the very insular ethnic community, but at the same time, they monopolize over IHSS for Korean elderly population in Koreatown. Next, the design of the IHSS policy shaped the formation of the dual subjectivity. IHSS does not require any training or qualification for workers. IHSS also allows the care recipients to directly hire and fire workers without intervention of agencies, which makes immigrant women's entry to the sector much easier. But at the same time, it also means that women workers are more likely to rely on personal relationship with the recipients in order to secure their job and the better working conditions. What about organizational context? SEIU began to deploy flexible strategies to recruit home care workers and achieved a significant organizing victory in Los Angeles in the late 1990s. To augment labor market security through IHSS providers' right to collective bargaining, the SEIU built an alliance with disability and senior groups and achieved significant gains, including wage increases, health benefits, overtime, and travel time in recent years. The SEIU also pushed the states so that the IHSS now sees the recipients of the service as hiring employers, yet the states also shares employer responsibility. However, the SEIU's social movement unionism approach through its alliance with disability and senior groups constrained the union's active intervention in the labor process with IHSS. So when Korean workers say that we are government workers because the government pays us, they are drawing on the union discourses around the state responsibility in IHSS. Summing up, in the absence of regulatory and protection mechanisms from the state nor the union, workers find their own strategies to mitigate possible exploitation from their recipients. Korean immigrant IHS workers deployed a two-pronged strategy that is closely tied to their worker subjectivity. The first one is a strategy based on their sense of co-ethnicity or fictive kin, and the other one is based on their sense of self as unionized workers in the public sector. The centrality of worker subjectivity in my study sheds light on the possibility of transformative politics for social changes in care workers' struggles. By interrogating how good care is defined in relation to their workerhood, and by highlighting how workers' alternative conceptualization of work and worker are linked to their right claims, this study expanded micropolitics-focused literature on care to the collective level. Thank you.
Thank you so much.